Now, we all know the Proclaimers would walk 500 miles, and even 500 more, just to fall down at your door. Well, our guest today has walked even further than that, and all for peace. Paul Haines completed his peace walk from Rome to Jerusalem in 2015, and he's here with us today. Thank you for coming on the show today, Paul. Hello, how are you doing? Hello, Paul, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Lovely.
Can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. No, all lovely. Very clear. How are you doing
Good.
today?
Very well, thanks. Lovely
Thank you.
sunny day.
Yes, I must admit, same here. Enjoying it after a few days of rain. Thank you very much
Yeah.
for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Before we go into obviously the more serious side of this, I've got to ask. Question for the nation: only one holiday or thing you could celebrate each year. What would you choose?
Holiday or
So
sort of?
think Christmas, Halloween, Easter, Valentine's Day, or you could go something more obscure. It's completely down to you.
I would probably go somewhere more obscure.
Oh, okay,
Def-
okay. Anything
yes,
in
I
specific?
love mysterious adventures, so that would be my preference.
Okay, fair enough. We have another vote for the something else there, guys, on the tally. Anyway, thought I'd just ask you that one. Thank you very much. We're going to go on now. So, obviously, what you've done is absolutely magnificent. But before we go on to that specifically, could you tell us a bit about yourself?
Right. Okay. Well, I'm 72 years old. I'm retired. I have become incredibly busy in my retirement. Um, I used to work in the BBC as a set designer.
Oh, wow.
That I probably the last, well, quite a number of years actually. I, I was retired on ill health grounds, so much of my time, probably since about 1996, I've been retired, and it's in the last 10 years that I've sort of become more active and have taken to long distance walking.
It's clearly working. Did you say, sorry, did you say you're 70? You're in your 70s?
Yeah, 72.
I No. I mean, I hope I do as well as you're doing right now. Flipping it, I'd never have guessed that in a million years. Well done. Um, so we're gonna go straight on with the walk. Rome to Jerusalem isn't your average Sunday afternoon stroll. Have you had you done any long distance walking before this?
Well, yes, that was 2015. So 2010, something happened, and I started walking, long distance walking, and so through 2010 to 2015, I did a number of pilgrimages in Spain, and
Wow.
then one in Switzerland, and then in Ireland, and I just got increasingly interested in long distance walking and the benefit of it, and obviously you can tell it's done me a lot of good. Um,
Absolutely.
and then in 2014, I then sort of progressed because I was wanting to be a bit more ambitious, and then I did the pilgrimage route, which was from London to Rome. And I did that for the Alzheimer's Society because I was volunteering here in Truro for the Singing for the Brain for people with Alzheimer's. So that was one of the things that sort of prompted me to do a walk, and really to walk for a cause as well, because all the way on that walk, I was walking for the Alzheimer's Society and talking to people about Alzheimer's and dementia. And it made me realise how good a way it was to walk and talk and raise awareness, and people responded to it incredibly.
That's really amazing, and to not been put off like the first time or to keep on going like you have done is absolutely fantastic. I like how you're doing that as well, being able to talk to people along the way about what you're doing. There's not many other kind of when you're trying to raise awareness. There's not many other things that people do where you can do that like actively throughout the activity you're doing. It's absolutely fantastic. Very, very long walks as well, I must say. That's incredible stuff. I must ask, what inspired your peace walk in 2015?
Well, it very much came off the back of the walk in 2014 from London to Rome, and what the strongest element of that was walking through the cemeteries of the First World War
Wow.
in the north of France. And what I couldn't get over was that day after day after day, and it went on for almost 3 weeks. I was walking past cemeteries from the First World War, and I would always stop and look in and see the names and what countries they'd come from. And it was like a dripping effect of thinking, this is absolutely incredible. I hadn't sort of I obviously knew the effect of the First World War and Second World War, but it actually walking through it progressively made you even more aware of it and connecting with the names of the people that had died. And that sort of was one of the major things that when I got to Rome, I thought, well, I would love to do another walk. And in terms of pilgrimages, having been to Santiago, to Compostela in Spain, then Rome, the three destinations for pilgrimages, the third would be Jerusalem. And I thought, if I had walked for Alzheimer's, I'd like to choose something else that was a theme for my walk, where I would engage with people. And of course, coming off the back of the walking through the cemeteries, and also coming across refugees as well in Italy, I thought, well, peace was a very worthy theme to theme the walk around.
Absolutely, and I can't believe how often you were coming across like these cemeteries, like you said, for the wars. And that, I mean, obviously everyone knows about it unless they've been living under a very heavy rock for their life. But to see and actually be there, it must really make it so much more real. Really hit home quite a lot. I can't imagine what that must have felt like. Going back to the sort of the planning for the 2015 walk, obviously you're going to be going through a lot of countries, and it's such a large size. What kind of planning do you have to put in, and how long do you have to plan for it?
Well, the walks I did were sort of planned, I guess, in the year before, because each year when I did the walk, that prompted the next year's walk. So in effect, the walk to Jerusalem took, part of, well, I suppose 6 months prior to me leaving. I was planning the route, planning how I would do it, also planning very much for the Peace Walk. I was engaging with a lot of people. I wrote to many people asking for messages of peace that I would take with me on my walk. So on the website I've got a replica of it now still. I've got messages of peace from the offices of David Cameron, who was Prime Minister at the time, and the Queen, and various different people I wrote to from different countries, from different faiths. Then I would also talk to people about it before I left. So locally here, I would talk to people and say, well, I'm going, and various choirs I sing with, they recognised that this was happening, and the Cornwall Faith Forum were very encouraging. Various different people that I just wanted to include in my walk, really, so that there was thought going on back home, but also across the world, and hopefully take the messages along with me. And interesting, there's a United Nations Cornwall group here, and they, it's a bit of a long story, so I won't include that, but they had a cup that was used in a peace chapel, and they said to me, will you take that to Jerusalem? So in my rucksack, I had a cup that had been used for services in the Peace Chapel in Cornwall back in the 80s. So that was a rather special thing to have with me as I walked.
I mean, I can't imagine the amount of. I mean, you would have to plan for something like this a great deal. Like you said, you were planning for months, but to have to go to all these different people, these different groups, to get all these messages together as well. It's incredible to get that all done in what is actually a small time frame for such a large accomplishment at the end of the day. An obvious question a lot of people will probably be wondering is, how many countries did this walk take you through?
I should have counted. It's somewhere in the region of 10, I think.
Wow.
I mean, it's Italy, Croatia, Bosnia Herzegovina, uh, Albania, Greece, Turkey, Cyprus, and others too. But quite a number, and obviously
That's
Israel, Palestine as well.
of course absolutely incredible stuff. So let's go to the actual the main message, obviously, of this walk. Could you tell us a little bit more about it? I believe peace and obviously reconciliation a big part of that.
Mm. Well, um, it's peace is such an interesting word because it means so much to different people, and it can be. Some people could see it as a sort of peace, love, and hippies from the '60s, or people from all religions. You see peace as so central, and then there's serious work done by groups, the NGOs, and so on with peace. So it has a broad meaning. But what I found was that it was just it's a word that touched everyone as I walked. There was an amazing response. I walked with a rucksack on my back and a small one on my front. So on both back and front, I had a symbol, the peace dove, in different languages, and people respond to that. As I was walking and would come up and talked about it, and so it was. It was quite incredible, really. So, I mean, the reconciliation was. In fact, I talked about this the other night to a group, and what happened was that as I was walking, I witnessed reconciliation. So that when I was in the Baltic countries, where they were coming to terms with the Baltic, with the war that happened there, or in, say, Cyprus, where there's the capital Nicosia is split with the buffer zone between the Greek Cypriots and the Turkish Cypriots. But there are people within that buffer zone that are working for peace, and it's very much so with young people that are involved, using all sorts of mediums, so sport, education, music. They use it to reconcile the differences between people in that historic sort of disputed area to bring about peace. So the walk was fascinating because I learned so much from it. I went with quite an open mind. I wanted to be educated and about what was happening, and obviously Israel and Palestine is a prime example of that. I knew very little about it, and I learned so much about the difficulties, the challenges, but also the wonderful people and groups that are working to reconcile the differences and bring about peace.
It sounds so beautiful, and I find it very interesting how there's all these different methods that people use for peace, for love, for reconciliation, for even wider sort of spectrum of positivity. It's always come down to sports, to music, all these different ways people can sort of express themselves. I feel it almost takes away the stigma from it, where people don't have a little bit of worry or anxiety. It gives them a way to get past that. And it's so lovely to know that you've seen this happening. I love what you've done as well, to have the dove and the different translations on your rucksacks as well. What else did you do to spread the message of peace during your walk?
Well, I suppose the other thing I had was I had books with me that I would take, and it was one very good way to engage with people. So that, I mean, I've got a book here which I'll show up to the camera. So it's books like that
Oh yeah.
that I would get people to write, and as you
Wow.
may just see, there's lots of different languages, Arabic and all sorts of languages. So that was a wonderful way to actually, when you stopped anywhere, I mean, on the street or where I was staying, and I would say, look, could you just have a think? I'm walking for peace. What's your thoughts? And they would think and they would write it down. And so it's a wonderful collection of people, and these are people from all walks of life, and different countries and faiths and so on. So it's a fascinating collection, which that was a big part of the walk. But there were many different aspects. I mean, a very poignant part of it was when I was on a Greek island, and it was the time of the 2015 refugees, masses of refugees leaving primarily Syria. And I stopped for about 2 weeks to help a number of people that were helping refugees that were arriving on the island. And that was just extraordinary to have that kind of closeness to refugees. It wasn't a camp; it was just a small little island, and they were just arriving off in boats. And you got very personal with refugees, and they would say to me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I was walking for peace." And then they said, "Well, we're walking away from war." This is a very interesting meeting of people,
Yeah.
and so we had many interesting discussions about what the terrible situations they had been through, and the need that they had to leave a country that was war torn, having lost family members and being tortured, whatever. So, I mean, it was very humbling actually to speak to them, and they were wonderfully proud, humble people themselves, leaving their country.
That must be so helpful to them as well, to see that there's somebody almost walking for their cause, basically, because they, like you said, they've been through hell, and there's still people going through hell, and you're here doing this amazing journey and doing things like that book as well. I think that's an absolutely magical and beautiful thing to do, because you get such a variety of different people's cultures, backgrounds, religion, all asking for this peace, all in one place, and you can show that we're just trying to try and bring this peace where we can. And I love that. Sorry, that one really touched me. Paul, I believe we've got a few small clips here from your website. As we go through them, could you tell us a little bit about them, please?
Okay.
Let's have a look.
Oh, that was from the Expos. Yeah, the Expo Milan. Interesting, because it wasn't necessarily a part of the Peace Walk. It was just before I left to start the Peace Walk. I've always been a great fan of World Expos, and so I thought, well, I'll go to the World Expo in Milan, and I will just see what it's like because there'd be country representatives from countries all over the world. And what I did was I went around each of the pavilions of about 110 countries over a period of about 4 or 5 days, and I talked to people from all over the world about peace. What was peace to them? And again, in the books that I showed you, there would be people writing messages from all around the world, which was just extraordinary. Yeah,
Absolutely beautiful stuff there.
yeah. Yeah, that was at every expo. There's a magical kind of illuminated display with sometimes with fireworks. There was water being used very theatrically. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
We're going to have another clip now, I believe, coming up next. Let's have a look at this one.
Yes, that was. I mean, that's interesting because that's at the World Expo as well. It's a song that I can't remember although it was Spanish. It was a Spanish group. The World Expo has a day for every country, and it was the Spain day. So they had a choir from Spain and singing about peace, which was rather lovely to hear.
It's nice to know that they have a day. They have a moment for everyone to get involved. There's no one left out.
Yeah, no, it's very good, and of course, singing is something that I've been very connected with in Cornwall, and I've organised World Peace Day events in Cornwall for about the last 4 years, getting choirs around from all over Cornwall. I think one year we had about 20 choirs. I think it was already been about 20 choirs, and of course that's a wonderful. I've got to know someone that's started something called One Day One Choir, and we were actually on an interview with Chaos last year, actually, talking about that. She's done a wonderful job of getting choirs around the world to sing for peace.
Fantastic stuff. I think we've got one more here for you. Just a small one here.
Ah, that's I remember that very well. That was in Albania.
Wow.
So
Okay.
he would trying to understand. There was a shepherd, and we were talking about the wild dogs, or in fact wolves, and he was demonstrating how that he was able to call his sheep, but call the dogs that were gathering his sheep. Um, but it was interesting to see that because I was actually quite imminently not here because of an attack by a pack of dogs. So it brings back memories that I was attacked by dogs in the north of Greece.
Oh wow.
Luckily, cars got in the way and I was managed to escape.
Well,
But that
I'm glad you're all right after hearing that flipping it. I hope you weren't too badly injured or anything.
no, luckily, yes. If the cars hadn't arrived, I probably wouldn't be here. But luckily, they were. Mm.
Very glad to hear that. Well, Paul, it's amazing to hear your stories. I'm sure there's 1,001 things more you could talk about with us. We could discuss this for a very long time. The main point is this is such a wonderful thing you're doing. You're putting in such an amazing effort. It's clearly keeping you young, very very much. And I'm going to take a tip out of your book there. That's absolutely fantastic. Where could people keep up to date with your work or any future walks that you're planning?
Well, I guess the main way I've obviously with what's been going on, I've not been able to do the plans that I had, which I had plenty of plans. And back in 2019, I walked from London via Brussels, Amsterdam to Hamburg, and
Wow.
that was in aid of or in connection with a website I'm developing, which is called linkstopeace.org. So in a way, you can sort of follow what I'm doing because progressively, as the time goes past, I'll be traveling around different countries and cities and adding information that I research while I'm walking. So that's obviously plans have been sort of like halted, but I hope that once we're all able to move again, I'll start walking again because I've got a number of plans ahead.
They're keeping very busy. Well, Paul, thank you so much for coming on the show. An absolute inspiration to so many people for so many reasons. Please do come back again. It's lovely to have you back on Chaos. It'd be lovely to have you get back on again in future.
Okay, all right. Well, good to be here, and I hope that perhaps my story does inspire people to think. Well, actually, I can do something. Because I think a lot of us can do things that we're not really aware that we can do.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. You're such a lovely bloke. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to chat to you.
We're great to be on the show too. Thanks. Thank you too.
Thank you very much, Paul. Absolutely
Okay.
lovely. What an inspiration. I struggle to do an half an hour walk, but my goodness me, I think I need to get going a bit more. And what a beautiful message, and so many amazing ways of spreading that message of peace and reconciliation and the general positivity that comes with it all.